When we talk about hockey at a crisis, do you get a lot of people that get a little defensive? People can be very protective of the sport in Canada.
I honestly thought that I'd be getting a lot of that. I thought I'd be getting a lot of people who said that I'm out to lunch, that I'm completely wrong. Why are you attacking our game? Because when you're in the bubble, and we have two young children who are both in hockey. When you're in the bubble, it feels just like a Tim Hortons commercial, right? Like it feels like you spend all your weekends at the rink. The kids are talking hockey, trading hockey cards, talking about hockey highlights. You spend the whole winter driving from one arena to the other. It feels like, I don't want to say normal, but do you know what I mean? It feels like that Canadian
Yeah.
ideal. The challenge is that fewer and fewer people are in that bubble. And I think that, minor hockey executives really do understand that now because they can see it in the raw data. They can see that, more kids are dropping out every year than signing up for hockey. They can see that, certain communities are still signing up for hockey, but many communities aren't. And it's not just along financial lines either. That, take a look at Brampton, Ontario, which is one of Canada's largest cities now. The population there has skyrocketed over the last 20 years, but the registration numbers have stagnated. And not only that, they've fallen dramatically. And that, by taking a look at real estate prices in Brampton, money's not the issue up there. So I do think that a lot of people who pay attention have probably been seeing this for quite some time. And I didn't get a lot of people saying I was an idiot. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still get lots of people calling me an idiot, just not for this.
Fair enough. So then if it's not financial, because even as an adult trying to play ice hockey, I had to stop because it became, over the course of a year playing summer, winter, you're looking at well over, $1,000 as an adult. So we know that prices are up even just for ice in general. So is that really what we're looking at, or are we looking at other issues outside of the financial?
That's a really good question, Anthony. And it is. The money is one thing. And the money, frankly, has been something we've been talking about for generations, right? Like since you and I both had hair, potentially. It's been that long.
It was a long time ago.
Right?
Yeah.
You do carry it better than I do.
Thanks.
But it's the time commitment. It's the fact that if you want to do anything, and we're talking about kids, if you want to do anything other than house league, which is the entry level, which is once or twice a week, which is, frankly, it's like taking piano lessons, right? You do it once or twice a week for an hour each time, and that's it. If you want to take any step above that to a competitive stream or a stream where you're on the ice a little bit more, it gets crazy really fast. That you're going to more practices. You're going to private skating sessions. Maybe you're going to stick handling sessions. There are tournaments. All of these things that you have. You go basically from an entry level point to drinking from the fire hose, and it only gets crazier the higher up you go. So people can see, maybe the extreme of this would be AAA hockey, where they are on the ice 6 days a week. They are, doing dry land training that seventh day. They're going 10 months a year. They're on the ice more than NHL teams, more than AHL teams, and people can see that and say, "There's no way in the world I want to contribute that much time to a child's pursuit." That is the extreme, but you're seeing it in AA hockey, single A hockey. You're seeing it in select hockey that, kids don't just sort of jump in. There's no happy medium between the entry level and the crazy level, or at least the happy medium can be very difficult to find.
So you mentioned having, in your book, having mixed race children.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that factor in to the debate?
Where we are, we play, we're in East York, so the east end of Toronto. If anybody's been to Toronto, it's, Greektown on the Danforth. We're just past that cool spot. We're a little bit further down the road. But on the team where our eldest plays, he's 9 now. I'm trying to think, they're potentially more than a half dozen biracial children on our team. But that being said, you can still go into any rink in Greater Toronto area, and oftentimes it'll feel like you're walking back in time a bit. You'll be walking back to maybe if you've seen that movie Pleasantville, where they go into the black and white sort of Leave It to Beaver theme, and there's there's a common theme there. There's a certain homogeny there. you can still get that. You can still walk into a rink in Toronto and feel like you've stepped back into a Leave It to Beaver episode and walk back out and you're like, no, I'm still in Toronto. It's 2020. And that is one of the real issues that hockey has not done a good enough job reaching out to communities that are underrepresented in the arenas. And again, it is not financial strictly. Financial is certainly part of it, but it's making it feel inclusive. It's making it feel welcome. And it's not, I'm not laying the blame here at the minor hockey administrators at your local rink. They're volunteers who volunteer their time for the love of the game, but they might not be equipped to reach out to people who aren't already in the arena. They might not be equipped to reach out to the new communities that have formed within their region. They might not be equipped to reach out to people who have drifted away from the game, to market the game. And that's one of the real core issues, is that for generations, hockey, I'm talking broadly, was able to say, hey, Canada, it's cold outside. Literally, what the hell else are you going to do other than come on in and play hockey in the rink? Now you can play indoor soccer in a bubble. You can play Fortnite. You can do nothing, which is another huge issue about kids being physically inactive. There's a lot more stuff you can do, and Canadians are becoming good at many things. We just saw, Chase Claypool over the weekend become the first Steelers rookie to get 4 touchdowns in a single game. He's from British Columbia. Jamal Murray is from Kitchener, Ontario, and turns out to be a pretty good basketball player. Like, Canadians aren't just, we're not just one thing anymore. So hockey has to do a better job of marketing itself.
Yeah, and not just that, but I mean, you see the young Canadian tennis players, and you look at what's happening. I mean, there's a lot of good golfers. Soccer, I mean, this is maybe the strongest pool of young soccer players we've ever had. So I think part of that goes to what you're saying, is that when these kids were growing up, maybe 15 years ago, it just wasn't all about hockey, and maybe their parents had some kind of financial restrictions, but either way, it's there are options out there. When you talk about some of the challenges, when we kind of cross racial lines and different cultures, I'm not a visible minority, but even I remember, having a vowel at the end of my last name and hearing slurs and stuff, and I don't have to deal with anything near of what the visible minorities do. I understand that, but my point is, if I got it in front of referees, other coaches who didn't stand up and say, hey, cut that out, or that's, you're out of the game for using a racial whatever. I mean, I had to deal with that, and I can't even imagine what specifically visible minorities have to deal with. So how much is the onus on the people that are there in the front rows there, the coaches, the referees, just doing a better job of making the game more inclusive and welcoming to everybody?
If you think about, if you think about how the game's presented, the biggest stage the game had for 30 some years, what's the biggest stage? Hockey Night in Canada, right? That was the biggest marketing tool hockey had in this country. It's, hey, it's Saturday night, come on around and watch the TV. And who had the biggest stage within Hockey Night in Canada for 30 years? It was a gentleman by the name of Don Cherry. And Don Cherry, did many, 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 many good things in that pulpit, certainly raising awareness for the challenges that Canadian veterans face. But the thing is that Don Cherry was from a certain era. And you can talk to lots of Canadians who might have watched Hockey Night in Canada and, slowly came to the realization that when Don Cherry was talking about good Canadians, he didn't necessarily have them in mind. And ultimately, the one that was the one that got him off the air was one of the most blatant examples of that, where he talked about poppy wearing and who was and wasn't wearing poppies, that he could walk around, Mississauga, which is a very multicultural area, and Toronto, which is arguably one of the most multicultural spots on earth. And that those people weren't wearing poppies. I think it was almost something along the lines of what he said. And that made it clear. And what that is it's a message, to folks who are watching or tuning in or passing by or read it on the news, that, this is the grand pulpit. And it was. Coach's Corner was the grand pulpit. And I'm not pinning the blame strictly on this. It is exactly everything you were talking about enforcement from the grassroots to the culture. But it starts with the messaging. And Don Cherry had a massive platform for years and years and years and reinforced a lot of the things we're seeing in the rink. So it sort of became a cycle. Is that broken now? No. Are we more aware of it? Yes. Is there substantive change happening? We're going to have to take a look back 30 years from now as historians and take a look, because those slurs and worse are still being said in arenas today.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also criticism, hockey, at least at the beginning, in terms of, social change and Black Lives Matter, we're a participant in that. But there's been criticism that it just kind of died off and it was just more of a, kind gesture, and whether that extends beyond what we saw in the bubble is, you know, I guess it's yet to be seen. But do you think it's a step in the right direction at least?
The NHL and what it did during the bubble, during that whole time, um, it felt like an awkward teenage boy at a school dance. I
Yeah.
don't know what to do here, so I'm just going to sort of hang out by the wall and try and message as best I can and hope nobody looks at me. Or maybe it's that person in math class who doesn't really get long division and just prays for that 60 minutes that the teacher doesn't call on them. And they were called upon. And yeah, have they made, again, substantive change? Have they taken steps in the right direction? No. No, they haven't made substantive change. But again, that's across all industries representation, including ours, frankly, media. So it's going to be a process, and it has been a process, and unfortunately will continue to be a process, I think. At the grassroots level, there are ways that, while everybody's waiting for the Titanic above them to start sort of slowly turning away from the iceberg that it's already hit, I think there are ways at the grassroots level where, you listening or you and me talking here can sort of help. And that's by getting involved and making more of an effort. That, I'll give a quick example here is up in Peterborough. Since the book came out, the Peterborough Petes have continued their work to try and reach new audiences within Peterborough. And Peterborough it's a retirement community filled with lots of white people, but there are other communities, and they're growing. So what the Petes did, Shelby Kilcollins, who works for the Petes, and she's very young, very energetic, very smart, and she needs to be all of those things to have pulled this off. She arranged to have a partnership with the New Canadian Centre, not a partnership, but the New Canadian Centre is an area where, if you're new to Canada, they'll help get your kids registered, they'll get you your SIN number, help get you your health card number. But again, like if your Nona came from Italy, 60 years ago and never got her proper paperwork, and now she needs to collect CPP or something, they'll help her go back and get the paperwork. They're completely indispensable. They're absolutely necessary. So what she did was she reached out to the New Canadian Centre saying, can you message your clients and let them know that if they've ever been curious about trying hockey, to come down to the Peterborough Memorial Centre, and we'll get them everything. They can go out and give it a try, and we'll give them tickets to a game. So what she did was she went around, she raided the Pete's storage room and got a whole bunch of extra skates, gloves, helmets, sticks. Then she went to the local arenas and to the Lost and Founds and grabbed any sticks, skates, and everything she could find. And then she arranged with Tim Hortons to supply coffee and hot chocolate and donuts and bagels. And then she arranged for a AA girls team that she coaches to come out and basically serve as an arm that people can hold on to if they've never been on the ice before. And what they did was they had, I think, 2 sessions of about 50 people on the ice at the Memorial Centre, from very, very young to, there was a retirement age couple on skates for the first time. And what the messaging there was like, look, we're in Peterborough. The Memorial Centre is where we call home in the winter. Welcome home. And had folks skate around, shoot the puck a little bit. There was lots of laughing. There was, lots of fun. And then they got to hang around and watch the game after. The next stage of that is connecting that triangle with the local minor hockey association, so that, you can find folks from the Peterborough Memorial Centre who went skating and the New Canadian Centre and the Peterborough Hockey Association to find an intro to programming. So if you're interested, this is what it's like. It's fun. Learn how to do it a little bit better here and get in the system and feel welcome. That's a way you can do it at the grassroots level. Your local minor hockey association in Dundas or Ancaster or in the Hammer or Burlington, Stony Creek, at the grassroots, if you have passion for this, you can volunteer and you can start making a difference at the local level.
That's great. And, I guess the irony is anyone that's resistant to multiculturalism or, hockey being overtaken by multiculturalism, the game can't survive without it. I mean, it really can't. At least it can't continue to be this, hockey superpower Canada that we've all been used to.
If you're resistant to multiculturalism in Canada, I have very bad news for you.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that every time a census comes out and we see that the population of Canada is growing. And it has been among the G7 nations, its population, again, because immigration, it has been growing, but Hockey Canada's numbers have been stagnant. So every year that Canada's population grows, and again, I don't have a mathematics degree and I barely got out of high school, but even I know that if the Canada's population keeps going up and hockey remains stagnant, hockey's losing a percentage of the population every year. And that's a bad picture for hockey. So, if all they're getting, and I'm talking about hockey, is the sons of wealthy parents, you're going to narrow your focus pretty soon. In fact, the Hamilton Spectator, Terry Pekoski, maybe 5 years ago now, did fabulous work where she reached out to every team in the Ontario Hockey League. And she said, look, I don't want any personal information. I just want the postal codes of all your kids. So the home addresses for all your kids who are on the roster this year, can you send them to me? I don't want any personal information, no names, no nothing, just the postal codes. And I think all but 3 or 4 teams got back to her. And what she found was she put the postal codes through Stats Canada data and found something like 85% of the kids were from urban areas. So that whole notion of, people coming from the mining towns that Tom Cochrane used to sing about in Big League, that's gone. And that, of those 85%, another 85% came from areas within those urban centers that were well above the average in terms of income. So the picture you get is, increasingly it's becoming Canadian polo, right? Like it's for the wealthy. It's for a certain subset of people. And unless hockey finds a way to open its doors to bring more people into the tent, that's all you're going to have.
Yeah, well, it's great, and I remember that piece by Terry as well. It was great.
It was a series. It was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean Fitz-Gerald, senior national writer for the Athletic, and author of Before the Lights Go Out: A Season Inside a Game on the Brink, which I'm sure you can find wherever books are sold. I found it very easily during my Google search. Last thing, during your research, have you gotten any numbers on the other sports? So hockey's down. Is soccer up? Is basketball up? Are they all up? How did those numbers kind of break down roughly?
Yeah, it's interesting. So soccer is and has been for a while the largest participation sport for kids in Canada. It's like 850,000. It's a ridiculously high number, but the attrition rate is enormous. So it's, kids go out at 4 and 5 and pick daisies and then just sort of, go away when they realize they don't like running that much. Basketball is a really tricky one because Canada basketball, for all of the good it's done lately in terms of being able to produce high-level talent, they do a terrible job at knowing who's playing. So they don't have the infrastructure to be able to tell you concrete statistics. So, Hockey Canada, one thing it does really well is, I'm a coach. Or my 2 children play. Every time they sign up to play somewhere, they're registered in a system. So Hockey Canada knows exactly what training courses I've taken as a coach. They know where I've coached, what I've coached, and at which levels. They know where my children play. And not only that, like the arena, but like which team and which level of team they've played at. So they can tell you data. They can break it down on a granular level. Basketball can't. A lot of other sports cannot. So we don't have a super clear picture. I mean, the general one is that children aren't participating in sports at the same level as they would have a generation ago. And that's the issue. That's why you see a lot of people talking about the need to get out and get exercise and, the risk of juvenile diabetes and sort of, the health issues that, kids get from playing Fortnite all day and all night. So sports at the youth level are fighting, I don't want to say fighting just each other, but also fighting other things of not being active. But yeah, like hockey is still hockey in Canada. It still has a huge number. It still has a massive base of participation. The challenge for hockey is that it eats its young. It chases kids away. That if, I don't learn to skate as quickly as Anthony does, I'm going to be streamed out, even though, maybe 5 years down the road, I'm going to be 6 inches taller, 20 pounds heavier, and a much better athlete. I'll be streamed out. And I'll end up becoming a very good volleyball player or something, whereas Anthony will get sick of being driven to the rink 7 days a week, 10 months a year by his parents, and he'll quit. So now all of a sudden you've gotten rid of 2 players instead of finding a way to foster them and keep them both in the game until they both realize their full potential. There's just so many challenges and so many different layers that, it's almost like putting out a series of fires. Which one do you put out first if you're Hockey Canada? And then the other one is that, Hockey Canada, despite being the top and despite being the governing body, still cedes a lot of power to the provincial bodies, which cedes a lot of power to the folks at your local arenas, because the programming that's developed up top is still implemented by volunteers at the bottom. And the volunteers who make up the grassroots can sometimes have their own ideas about the best way to develop programming for children.
Great. We can get more of this inside the book. Before the Lights Go Out, a season inside a game on the brink by Sean Fitz-Gerald. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me, Anthony.